connection to our ancestors for our blood. Our hearts beat the same, whether or not we are conscious of it. Our ancestor spirit carries it and is connected to our spirits, just as every generation before. Our blood and our spirit is our key, not the colour of our skin.
One by one we'll take it to the top. A message from my dream. Till we get there, we won't stop. Won't you sing with me, my sister? Yes, sing with me, my friend. Sing with me, my brother. Sing it to a brother, man. As one till the end. Let's stand up together. Bring your totems to our fire. Let's stand up together and bring the spirit back to life as we place them in the sand. Like the eagle, they're so higher. Let's stand up together as our tribes all unite. Well, you is for you.
Well, welcome everybody. Welcome for now, just to as we gather, and there'll be a few more people popping in, I imagine, as we get going. But welcome to this public information session, number 3. And it's been a while since our last gathering, and a lot has transpired. So it's good to be coming back and gathering together. That wonderful song we heard a few minutes of from Dane Kennedy and Jason Kelly. Descendants of the Mungo story, singing Stand Up Together, Let Our Tribes All Unite. Couldn't be a more appropriate way to just come together tonight. So Brother Jason Kelly, Muddy Man, is going to do an acknowledgement of country, and then we'll get into the sharing. So Jason.
Thank you, Ben. Thank everyone for being here, and of course, pay particular special acknowledgement to my Nyampa family, Uncle Roy Kennedy, Auntie Beryl's. I can see that Sharon and Mark are in here, so I want to acknowledge them first. I'm holding a message stick. Some of you have seen this before. For those who haven't seen it, for those who have seen the map of Australia before colonisation, you will see that Australia is a continent made up of 250 different language groups, 400 different nations. And whilst we had our tribal boundaries and our greater tribal boundaries, this was this was your passport. This is what got you through all those other nations, you know, in a culturally respectful way. This has a story on it, and it's for, you know, it's an individual but a collective one. So I'll quickly go through this as I do this acknowledgement. Up here, we'll see the traditional symbol for our creator and our creative spirit. We call in Muddy, we called him Mamurai. That was our word for the creative spirit, or some people might know it as God. Down here, we had the symbols for your family, the mother, the child, and the father. Followed by, when I spoke about the boundary and the greater boundary, this was the 6 symbols representing those different nations. But in a modern context, this could represent your neighbour, your neighbouring country, neighbouring state. Down here, we had the symbol for your spiritual path, your spiritual journey, and also followed by the symbol for your traveling tracks, your physical part of life, and the circles represent the different stages of your life. For our elders, and definitely for me, for my grandma, I don't consider that these are no longer 2 separate trails. They're interconnected, your spiritual trail and your physical trail. And I hope one day I aspire to get to the stage where they're no longer separated from myself. Underneath that, we've got the symbol for your for community, and we're all, like in the song, we're all brothers and sisters in the global community. But whilst we're the first peoples of Australia, we're all indigenous to Mother Earth. So on behalf of everyone holding this message stick, I'm going to acknowledge everyone in the Muddy language. So iri Muddy wamba with Pungi Puka Manama Pingali Prembai Ingenen Ola Amigo on Lachi Niente and Neri Dangi. Kakawito Mero means all here is one mob. Ola Mungo Watungi, Mungo Leo, so it's Mungo Man, Mungo Lady. And also Uluru Pangu Murni. So I'm talking about Mungo Man, Mungo Lady. I'm honouring the ancestors past, but I'm also honouring, when I say Pangu Murni, our children and the future generations, because this is what it's all really about. Of course, pay my respects to elders past and present, and all of my First Nations brothers and sisters in the room, and all other elders. And additionally, I always like to make an additional acknowledgement, pay my respects to members of the stolen generations, those who have made their way home, but those that are still on that journey. So thank you. So that was the acknowledgement and the welcoming, and it's great that we're all here in this space. And like Ben said, there is a lot to talk about. This is the third part of the public education part, and where we are with Mungo. Ben, maybe you might want to just do a bit of a summary of sort of like where we are, and then I can kick off sort of like the events where we're up to now and what's sort of been happening.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Jason. And acknowledging Uncle Danny, Kelly, who's here, Auntie Vicky, and we see Sharon as well, as you acknowledged from the Nyampa, from Roy and Beryl's family, which is wonderful. And yeah, so many of you know that the proposal called the Referral Document was sent up from the New South Wales government to the Environmental Minister, Minister Susan Ley, her department for water and the environment. And this was the 106-page document that was essentially proposing anonymous reburial of all the Willandra remains, 108 individual in total, and actually never mentioned once by name Mungo Man or Mungo Lady, which is striking in itself. That proposal did encounter strong criticism and opposition from many different groups and many different sides, including many Indigenous people. That Jason did a great job of documenting a lot of that, but there was many voices that were not in agreement with this anonymous secret reburial plan. And there were other submissions. Obviously, my father, Dr. Jim Bowler, is here as well, who documented in great detail the threat to the heritage values that such a eventuation would have meant. So Minister Ley, who you may know, it's actually her constituency, it's her seat. I think it's Farah, and this is encompasses the World Heritage Area of the Willandra Lakes. So she has a deep personal interest, not just as Minister for the Environment, but as perhaps Providence would have it, she is also representing that land in the Australian Parliament. So she sent it back as a controlled action. I do want to acknowledge and thank Simon Molesworth, QC, who's also here with us today, who helped us understand some of the arcane language of the process. But a proposed action, meaning that Susan Ley determined that the proposal would have a negative impact on the heritage values, and so now it goes back to the New South Wales government, and there is a comment period starting on November the 1st that will last for 40 business days. Exactly the same proposal, nothing changes. It's exactly the same, and all of the submissions on comments need to be resubmitted, perhaps updated, but they all need to be resubmitted. As we talk about a consensus approach, and what Jason and many others are now calling for, of a simple 3-stage way forward, I will share this. One of the key architects of the original proposal, let's call it that, the referral, has shared that the primary concern, one of the primary concerns, was one of security for the Aboriginal, for the ancestral remains. So there's a strong desire to get these human remains back in the sand. That is universal. There's no argument about that, or very little. Maybe some scientists are arguing about access, but the general overwhelming consensus is return to sand. Mungo Lady has been in a box essentially since 1993, coming up to nearly 30 years without being reburied. So there is a very strong impetus to return to the sand. Now, the issue of security is one of what I understand, and it's a complicated space, but what I understand is the issue of security was one of the real drivers for those that were saying, let's just get them back in the ground anonymously so nobody knows where they are, and that will be our security, that nobody will know where they are. That seems to be, if we're going to have an alternative pathway forward, the issue of security needs to be respectfully addressed. How there are many different tools we have these days to provide such security. So Jason and Danny, and in conversation with Jim and others, started to map out this sort of 3-stage process forward, which simply means immediate reburial with security in the shortest term for Mungo Lady and Mungo Man, as soon as possible, with an appropriate cultural marking. And there are some examples we can look at that. This then triggers a phase 2 or stage 2 of an 18-month consultation process funded by the federal government, the New South Wales government, a combination of both, to consult with wider funded consultation with Indigenous communities, particularly the 3 TTGs, and then broader Aboriginal communities, and then broader community as well, the scientists, as well as historians and others, Australians who have a voice. And ultimately then the phase 3 is the rollout of what is wanted out there. Is it a keeping place? Is it a cultural center? Is it an educational center? Is it a pilgrimage memorial? What exactly? There's all these ideas. What do the people want? And led by the Aboriginal voices and led by particularly the 3 tribal groups. So this is what we feel now, and I'll close in a moment. In terms of now the comment period opening up, Minister Don Harwin, who's the Heritage Minister for New South Wales, it goes back to his court now, to build consensus led by Aboriginal voices. And you'll hear already a very good number of senior Aboriginal voices are getting behind this proposal. We want to support that. We want to support the immediate, we the community want to support the immediate repatriation of Mungo Man and Mungo Lady in an appropriate way, in a secure way, and then to have a big yarn conversation about what the people want to see out there, and then have that funded by the government. It's pretty simple. It's pretty simple. It doesn't delay in getting those Mungo Lady, Mungo Man returned to the sand. It doesn't delay. It does provide a marking and a known location. It does provide for security, and that future generations can build upon this story. And it does consult with the community to find out what is the will of the people for this iconic. And yet, as Minister Susan Ley said to Jim just a few months ago, she said it's the oldest World Heritage area in Australia and the least well known. Well, perhaps this is a turning of the tide about how this story can come to represent something that is in its potential as a healing, as an education, and as a way forward for Aboriginal Australians and for the broader Australian community. So, Jason, you have taken that document with your dad and you and others, and are doing an amazing job of building consensus. And of course, now with Uncle Roy Kennedy and Beryl Kennedy lending their weight to it, it gives incredibly important cultural power to this. Is a way forward. It's a positive. There's no criticism of the alternative view that's personal or anything. It's just that there's a general consensus that this is a way we can step forward. So, Jason, back to you. I know, of course, Professor Jim Bowler has much to share on the issue as well. Yep. But I think let's hear from you and your dad, Jason, about how this is landing from a cultural and from your own perspective.
I think, Ben, before I go into and give an update on like the things that are happening now, it might be really good. I don't know if we've got the video of Ani Tuki available, the one that we played in the first 2 forums, to sort of like articulate how how this has always been the vision and the will of the elders that have been at the table right from the beginning. And then from that, I can go into what's come about now and some of the important things that have happened since those last public forums, because there might be some people here that haven't seen that. It might be really useful to play that now, and then I can go and do those updates and read then about what the proposal is coming from, some our most senior elders and supported by other important people.
Yes, Jason, give me a couple of minutes to find that video. Perhaps you might share a little bit about an update in the meantime, and I'll go and find that video.
All right. While you're finding that, for those who know there was a 103-page reburial report, and then there was no opportunity for while they might say this is the AAG, when I say AAG, the Aboriginal Advisory Group's report, it couldn't be, it's far from it. There was no opportunity for the AAG to really really inform this report. It was done in a way, when it was finalised, there was a 13-minute presentation just around the 26 different proposed spots where the burials would take place. And then when that sort of finished, the elders were just dumped with this 103-page document that no one really had an opportunity to have input to. I went through the document and it was just really straight away, it was really evident. Plus me being there, sitting beside Nan and all those other people as a young fella and coming up through, and having my own father being at the table for 30 plus years, sitting next to those other important elders, it was really clear that this report was just so full of what it did. It wiped away 30 years of decisions. It wiped away 30 years of relationship building between the elders and the scientists and all other stakeholders. For those who don't know, of course, there was when Mungo Man and Mungo Lady first found Jim Bowler. Of course, Alice Kelly, my grandmother, she started really advocating for the return and talking about how they're our people. She went up and got the Nyampa elders and got the Barkindji elders, because it was important, being shared country, that they all were advocates and had a say in this. That led to, of course, there was some really hard discussions in the beginning, but it was 30 years of relationship building. And in the end, to cut a long story short, there was agreement that Mungo Man and Mungo Lady needed to come back, that there needed to be a keeping place so just in case Mungo Man and Mungo Lady, other examples came up, they would never have to leave Willandra ever again. And there was agreement between the scientists and the elders that there could be research done, but as long as the elders had oversight of that, and that was done in a way that would not hurt these remains as if they were living people. And then the keeping place was a transitional place for them to be returned back to Mother Earth. This report says we never wanted a keeping place. We never wanted a cultural education centre. It pitted a reburial versus keeping place. It was always reburial and keeping place, plus the education centre, an international education centre that Nana wanted and the elders wanted. So when that report came up, my father and I, as AAG members, we really insisted that we needed an opportunity for all the other AAG members to workshop it, to get a full understanding of what this report is actually saying, and they were denied. All of these requests were denied for future meetings. Then there was a request for full group meetings, individually between the three tribes and then collectively around this. Then when we came and spoke about this report at a time of public comment, and sticking to all the things that we've been saying as Aboriginal Advisory Group members as part of this committee, and still observing the rules for committees around New South Wales governments, making sure that everything we were saying was actually on the record in those meetings. The New South Wales and Parks and Wildlife gave my father a show cause notice for speaking up about this report in this forum at a time when public comment was around. We did a really detailed, probably 9-page response to that, highlighting all the errors where they're wrong in the terms of reference. We were highlighting United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People articles. We highlighted UNESCO policy for engaging with Indigenous people sections, and talked about our right to talk about this and highlight the factual errors. So that show cause notice was given to us and given to my father on, so let me try and get the date. So that actually
Uncle Danny's here too.
I can see Dad's there
with you, and I've got the video when you're ready.
Yeah. So on the 13th of So I just want to make sure I got the dates right. So on the 15th of August, we provided a response to that show cause notice. On the 10th of September, we felt even, I can't even believe that that was even, they even read it, but the New South Wales Executive Director sacked my father and myself from the AAG for talking up about this in these specific forums. We did lodge a complaint with the Ombudsman on the 13th of September, and on the 21st of September, the Ombudsman confirmed that they were looking into our complaint for unfair treatment, but we've had no further response. But I guess that now that I'm already speaking about, I want to highlight also that this year, on the 3rd of March, when we saw this report, we sent a letter, all the Muddy AAG, and including the current chair and the other rep that sits there, although the chair now wants her name withdrawn, removed from that letter. But that letter was around our opposition to the reburial plan and asking and seeking all of those things around full group meetings, rectifying the reburial report, and highlighting and wanting those things done. Last year, as you know, when I spoke about early in the previous one, we passed a resolution at the AAG to write to Minister Lay in 2019, seeking all of these things that's in this proposal now, wanting the reburials with memorials, wanting a keeping place, wanting the education centre. When we presented back to the full Willandra Lakes Heritage Committee, made up of the scientists, landowners, local government, parks managers, we were informed that we don't have the right to write directly to the minister. We've got to pass those things through them. Another things that we've done, trying to follow their rules, fulfilling our obligations as part of following their processes. We put resolutions up through to Mike Williamson, the independent chair for the full committee last year, and with a resolution seeking an independent review of all previous minutes to deliver a report on the responsiveness to Aboriginal issues at Mungo. And we wanted that to be done within 3 months as a resolution. And that was to deliver that report on the elders' voice. And we wanted to also say that if you're making these decisions now, we want that elders report because it highlights all of the things, how it's been. This is what we've been wanting and saying since the since the early 90s, really, after those 20 years of relationships building. Secondly, there was another resolution that we asked for a 30-year plan to deliver Aboriginal self-determination within the Willandra Lakes area. And we wanted that 30-year plan to have yearly incremental goals with yearly and 5-yearly goals that would lead to that long-term success, and with the idea that Mungo would go back to the free tribes for our full control. And so there are things that we put up as that were then again denied, even when we're following the processes. We have where else is it?
I just wondered, Jason, if you want, if your dad Danny just wants to, say a few words as we're kicking this off. Uncle Danny. There you are. Hey. We got you.
Yeah, look, Jason covered a fair bit there. What's been going on, But the thing is, like, with the AAG, when they reset it up again, they brought everybody back there and said, "Yous are an advisory committee. Yous do what we say. It's not the other way around. All right? More control. Mission mentality of going back to when they set up and had our people in the missions locked up, being managed by a white manager. And this is what Mungo is all about. It's all about controlling and managing us to keep us from not to step outside that line, see? And they got a bit of a shaken up now, but still things are slow moving forward, It's just like that they think that we're going to go away, just like everything else that's been happening out there. What don't go away gets blown away, you know? And that's how it is, you know. There's no cultural respect or nothing for any of us out there. And even that CEO, he's a damn good mission manager, I'm telling you. He want to be sent back to the 40s, that fella, because that's where he's, you know, that's what he loves doing. So the model they're using for the AAG, it wants ripping up and burning. I need to do something with it because it's just a model they're using that's not allowing us to move forward and having to say about our culture and our heritage and to share it, you know? It's not only the ancestral remains, the bones are not out there, it's also the place itself, you know? It's a spiritual place, and everybody acknowledges that when they go out there, and it has a lot of healing to offer. Doesn't matter where you come from.
Yes.
So that's not even taken into consideration whatsoever. And these are when they have a secret burial of our ancestors, and only elected few are going to be, you know, be invited to attend. You know, that's inappropriate. That is in itself. Well, all right then. I think I had enough to say now, Ben.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Uncle
Dad.
Kenny.
Ben, before I go further with a little bit of an update again and read the proposal, the proposal, now might be the appropriate time to quickly play that video of Arnie Tookie.
Yep.
Because it really speaks to what really we've been wanting, and all the elders been wanting all along, and it hasn't changed.
Yep. Okay, let's go. Here's Mary. Get it going.
And up in the air, going for it.
Yeah, I've got it happening in multiples here. All right.
I'm Mary Pappen. I belong to the Mutti Mutti people, and Alice Kelly was my mother. And through the years, she was a great inspiration for us to make sure that we looked after country, walked in country, and made sure that our future generations would know about our cultural heritage on the ground. Mungo National Park was such a place where we went, where she was very much involved, and we just went from there in leaps and bounds to talk about cultural heritage, save it, protect it, and work with it. But somewhere along the line, we got overstepped. And it most likely would have been governments that stuck their mags in, because I believe they wanted it all for themselves. They didn't want to share nothing. When we preached to them that Mungo was a sharing place for all Aboriginal people and all walks of life. And we want to preserve our stuff that's on the ground.
And you think that the keeping place would be also the site where that Mungo lady and Mungo man would go back in the ground?
Of course, because
there.
then we got them right there. We know where they are all the time then.
So what difference does it make to you, do you think, in your story, if this goes ahead and they're placed back anonymously and nobody knows where they are? What do you think?
We've lost all contact with our people that came up for us in the first place 50 years ago. They came up out of the ground because this is when they just come up.
Yeah, that's right.
When they just come up back in the 60s, they come up because they knew the struggle with Aboriginal Australia and Aboriginal people in making their way in society, but not getting recognised. And our Aboriginal people need to recognise who they are, where they're coming from, and what culture they are. To survive in this landscape now, you have to know who you are and what you belong to, so that you can preserve it for the next generation, like our old people did 60,000 years ago. You know, if they had sold out like even 40,000 years ago, where would we be? They hung on to that cultural heritage and that landscape for us. And what's happened to us? We're fighting against everything to keep our cultural heritage going on the ground. We can't even get into country because they've put fences up to stop us. Unless you're there for a reason, they don't want you there.
So Mary, you're calling for, what would you like to see when Mungo man and Mungo lady are returned to the soil, reburied? What's your vision? What would you like to see?
They can't go back in the ground until after we get our keeping place, because that was the idea of making sure that the keeping place was going to be the place where they should go, back in the ground behind the keeping place in that landscape. That's where it was going to be. And, you know, we didn't want them locked away and buried so that they could never be seen again. We want them there where we knew they was safe, where we could keep an eye on them and look after them. But we also knew we'd need them one day to explain to the rest of the world just how precious these people were to us, in showing the rest of the world that our landscape was older than, you know, the millennium. We were so proud of those two people, and there's more out there.
I admire Mary's courage and position of...
Don't forget about the passion for my people.
and her attitude to recognising her mother's importance in this whole story, and the other Indigenous groups who are in this landscape. But I think Mary and her passion for others to be informed other than Indigenous people is so vital, especially, I believe, Mary, that these wonderful people are national treasures to all of us. They are some beacon of light and hope, Mungo man and Mungo lady, as a way of honouring the Indigenous or the first Australians or the original people here in Australia. And I support you and honour you and your group to do what you feel is best for your people.
Thank you, Joni. Thank you. You just sound like your old husband.
What would be your biggest concern if this goes ahead and those bones are put back and nobody knows where they are and they're secret and forgotten to the rest of the world?
Well, I don't think they're ever going to be secret to me, but they will be losing their cultural identity. Our Aboriginal people will lose their cultural identity to say, this here is where our old people walked. This here is where we can teach our younger ones in future years. This here is our cultural heritage place. We will share this with you, but you've got to be willing to share with us too and have a bit of compassion for our Aboriginal people who suffered and died on this landscape when you first come here. I mean, after another 100 years, there probably won't be hardly any landscape. There'll be just a big dust bowl. I don't know. But that's not going to be any good to my great-great-great-great-grandkids, if you know what I mean. I mean, we only have a 50 or 70-year lifespan, and then the next generation takes over. Well, how many more do you think we're going to have? How many more are we going to be able to say this is a cultural heritage place of Aboriginal Australia if they can't go and learn it from there? Because there might be other places, but that's the big book out there. And the sand slowly blows and brings more. I mean, there we got the footprint side. There we had Mungo Lady. There we had Mungo Man. And others are coming up. You know, they're not for the taking. They're to be, if they are, to be protected, but also in a safe place. And a keeping place is our place that we need to have. Other blackfellas have keeping places in country. Why can't we have one?
So that, I'm not going to go back into any other things like I was going to do before, around the request to go and review the reburial report and all that, because we know that's going to happen. Dad spoke about how the bureaucratic processes have just always ensured that management had always kept control out there at Parks and Wildlife with with the free tribal groups, and control has always been contrary to self-determination. So what are we asking? What do we want now? There is a free-phase plan. There is the Willandra Reburial Infrastructure free-phase plan. I'm going to read this free-phase plan because this is what we want you to do. We need your support. We need you to get the government to commit and to, if this is what we're wanting, the government to say, we will support this, because we need to get our voice that's been held back at the table by the New South Wales government, by all of those mission managers that sat there as executives through whatever government agency it is, Parks and Wildlife, Office of Environment and Heritage. What we're asking is for your support. This has already got the support of, signed by all of these muddy people, no less than 5 muddy elders. It's been signed off by the 2 most important, most senior Nyampa elders. We're asking for your support to get the government to commit to this. If this is what we're wanting, then we need your support to get the government. I'm going to read what this proposal is, and it goes back to, it allows for the immediate reburial of Mungo Man and Mungo Lady, because enough's enough and time is time. It's not about us stopping that. So I'm gonna read this, and then we can open it up to discussion. Free Players Plan. So the introduction. There is broad agreement that it is past time for the remains of Mungo Man and Mungo Lady to be returned to the ground in accordance with Aboriginal aspirations. Further deliberations as to the details of the reburial should no longer delay the immediate return. Hence, we, the undersigned, propose this 3-part process that allows for immediate reburial and further consultation about future infrastructure out on the site. 1, immediate reburial of Mungo Man and Mungo Lady, reburial of the iconic remains of Mungo Man and Mungo Lady in a secure manner at a known location with some form of appropriate marking or simple memorial. Now, what we're proposing is a traditional burial mounds. And when our people were laid to rest, it wasn't out there in the paddock like it is now. There was a traditional reburial mounds. This can still happen. Like Auntie Tookie was saying, she's talked about it being behind the keeping place, behind the education centre. No, we don't have the keeping place or education centre, but it shouldn't delay the reburial, because this is why we've got a free phase plan. 2, broad community consultation process on infrastructure and reburial of remaining ancestors. And when I talk about the infrastructure, it's already been agreed and 20, 30 years ago around a keeping place. There were 3 models put up. The elders agreed on one that was going to go where the lookout is at Mungo, and it was to be an underground keeping place. It's just a matter of go back and revisiting those elders' wishes before. But anyway, 2, broad community consultation process on infrastructure and reburial of remaining ancestors. Community consultation with Aboriginal groups, all stakeholders, and the wider community as to the aspirations around the keeping place, education centre, culture centre, memorials. This process, funded by government, would allow for all views to be heard and would include democratic decision-making instruments to allow for a clear plan to be made for initial infrastructures and ongoing management of those infrastructures for future generations. Stakeholders including the conversations process, of course, the free tribal groups, but we'd like to have it open up to wider Aboriginal voices, scientists, educators, architects, philanthropists, as well as local, state and federal government. We propose that this process be completed within 18 months of the reburial. Part 3, the rollout of infrastructure. Following the community consultation, the decision-making processes in phase 2, the federal government, in partnership with New South Wales and other contributors, commit the funding to roll out the agreed infrastructure and management plan with ongoing community involvement. Conclusion, the simple three-phase plan allows for the immediate reburial of these beloved ancestors and lays down a marker for future generations, keeping the promise of what Mungo could be alive and its potential. It also allows for the much needed proper consultation with the free traditional tribal groups and wider community as to what we the people want to see happen to honour Australia's oldest human remains within the magical landscape of Australia's oldest World Heritage sites. That's where we are, and this is what we're wanting for you, from all of yous, is support with this proposal.
That's great, Jason. That's really, really clear. Thank you so much. And would you just share a little bit about, who, just in the first few weeks of really putting this out there, who's come on to support it? And then we'll hear from Professor Jim Bowler about his, view on things, and then we'll open it up to a discussion. But tell us, Jason, who's kind of driving this and behind this and supporting this?
Well, as you can see from Arnie Tookie's video, she's a big, a big pusher of this and an advocate of this, because she hasn't changed her language at all of what we wanted. But in terms of, because not being able to, only getting around to go and sign it, what people are able to see, of course, we've got children from Nan's siblings, Auntie Barbara Egan, Auntie Tessie Sampson, Dad, of course, Vicky Clark has signed it, for those who know Vicky, and then there's just all other descendants, other Muddy descendants and grandchildren of Alice Kelly, plus Alice Kelly's siblings. There is support for out there. I put it through our private Facebook group. Got 99 members on that. Everyone's seen that, and a lot of them are put up in the comments. Of course, Dad and I went out and had a visit with Uncle Roy Kennedy to make sure that, and one thing, that's one thing I've always been mindful of, that I haven't seen happen through the AAG, is through, not the AAG, but through the Parks and Wildlife with that further consultation. Elders that have been out there for a long time have been left in a lurch with decision making and process and what's been happening out there. I'll go back to when I drafted that letter to Susan Lay initially. I drafted that letter in consultation with Arnie Tookie, the Barkagee reps and elders, but also I made sure that I spoke to Uncle Roy on the phone, drafted it, sent it to him in the mail, waited for it to get there, and then went through that letter again with him to see if he wanted me to change any wording or anything like that. And then when I had the blessing of all from elders from all the three tribes, that initial letter went to Susan Lay. That got knocked on the head and blocked by the New South Wales government through their reps at the table out there. So, but anyway, this is where we are. This is what we're wanting. It keeps the vision alive. It allows for Mungo Man and Mungo Lady to be reburied, but we want that commitment. We want that commitment to the keeping place. We want that commitment for the education centre. We want that commitment that allows for, the preservation of our Aboriginal heritage and protection, and that education for our future generation. Because this is not about us, it's about all our future generations. It's not just about our future generations for the children of the descendants, for the free tribes. It's for all the children of Australia. What a gift and what a blessing for the rest of the world to have this preserved, as we honour the legacy of not just Mungo Man and Mungo Lady, but all of those elders who sat at that table right from the beginning.
Thanks, Jason. And I do believe we've got some family of Uncle Roy and Auntie Beryl here in Mark and Sharon. Did you guys wanted to come in here and say a few words, Mark and Sharon? Let's get you unmuted. There you are.
Yeah. I'm just really happy that Jason came and Danny came to see Mum and Dad. I was away, unfortunately, at the time, but I do feel what I think I was there on a couple of occasions when we had a few meetings about the remains being returned and stuff like that. And I'm very happy that Jason and his dad's got on board and started doing a few things here, because I do believe that our rights have been taken away at the moment. I don't think that we have enough consultation. I mean, I have honestly haven't heard anything at the moment, but until Jason got in contact with me. But I think that we are being, well, to me, taken over, and we're pushed aside for the moment. And I don't think that that's very good. I know that Dad's a little bit upset and a little bit cranky, but you know, he's unfortunately at their age. I mean, I can take him to the meetings, but unfortunately, it's a little bit too hard. But yeah, I think what Jason is doing is great.
Oh, thanks, Sharon. And Mike?
Yeah, so look, once again, I just want to reiterate what Mum said. You know, I just want to thank Jason and Uncle Danny for informing us, being that we really haven't had any information sort of sent our way, unfortunately, and to be sort of honest with you, you know, I've heard things, and which sort of, you know, really sparked my interest in terms of you know, a lot of conflict of interests and all that sort of stuff going on at Mungo, and to me that sort of is sort of really, you know, getting under my skin in terms of the whole back of our remains being laid to rest, and I want to see, you know, the Mungo man, Mungo lady, you know, back in their resting place. I want to see that keeping place happen, because I think it's very important for everyone, both the three tribal groups, but not only that, but the whole of Australia, everyone, you know, the whole of the world, being that, you know, these remains are highly significant. You know, they're world known. You know, they changed the face of history, and here we are. You know, they're in the hands of agencies that you know that won't allow them back to their final resting place, and to me and to the rest of the Nyampa people, and I'm speaking for them, is that you know, that's really sad. It's sad. And you know, I want to thank you also, Ben, for pushing it, and Rob also, you know, coming on board for the support in this. And look, I'm on board at 110%. And the more information I can get, and the more I can talk with Jason, yourself, Ben, Uncle Danny, I'll get Mum involved as much as I can, Pop, the whole lot. I'm pushing forward with this, and I'm going to make sure it happens. And I want to see the Mungo man and Mungo lady and those remains put back in the ground before my grandmother and grandfather pass on.
Oh, yeah. Well said, Mark. Thank you so much.
Can I just say something?
Vicky, hey.
Hey, how are you? Ben, you know, at the end of the day, it really makes me really sad to know that the people that have been sitting around that closed room have not been resourced in their traditional way. Like for thousands of years, our old people have been carrying message sticks, sharing communication. We didn't need internet. We didn't need Facebook. We didn't need any of that technology. And the government departments, whether it's national parks or wildlife or whoever, have not resourced, and this is the real failure, have not resourced our people that have been elected through various processes to be able to do that. And part of that process of election, that should be their responsibility to going out to, and I'm sure Jason's has said this in a different way, but the members that are sitting around the AAG should have been totally resourced to carry the message thick and to be able to talk about these things, and they did not resource them. They failed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
This is where, like when I listened to it in the AMP for people, talking, and no doubt this is happening with the Barkentry people too.
Uh-huh.
There's other. This is a terrible, terrible, terrible shame and disrespect of Aboriginal culture of carrying a message thick.
Yeah, thank you, Vicky.
Across our family groups.
Thank you, Vicky. Very, very, very true. Very true. And I think you've, in a way, hit the nail on the head. That lack of funding, lack of political will, lack of leadership, lack of vision, sadly, has led us to now. Now, the good news is we still have a chance to help steer this as a community led by the Aboriginal voices, particularly led by those Aboriginal voices which are going back to the old people who were there in the 60s and 70s when this was, and the 80s, and really formed the vision of what Mungo could be, like your grandmother Vicky, and like Mark's pop and Sharon's dad and mum. Listening to the elders, really now's the time to do that. And I think, Vicky, you've shown us a way forward. The good news is that through a collective effort and campaign, the original proposal was rejected as a controlled action, and we have another opportunity to build cohesion and consensus around and behind the Indigenous voices and the elders. So I want to thank you for that. I want to get to Jim because he's been very patient. But Mark, again, thank you. Thank you, Auntie Vicky. And Sharon, please give my best, Sharon, to your mum and dad. And Vicky, we'll come back to you. If we can go to Jim now, that would be just in the interest of time, unless you had one quick comment.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, if there's a true warrior of carrying a message stick, is Jason Kelly.
True.
And we got to honour that. And I just want to say that we need to honour Jason Kelly as a true warrior of keeping the traditional law and a way of communicating and making government departments accountable of respecting our way of communicating, and that we've done for thousands of years. So, Jason, I just want to say thank you, Cuz, for doing that.
Thank you, Vicky.
Good on you, Vicky. That's awesome. Beautiful. Thank you, Vicky, for that. And just a quick acknowledgement to our American friends on the East Coast who got up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Just as Mark said, this story has got universal significance. So to Janice and Jeff and Peter and Tex, thank you for being with us. Your solidarity at this moment is very welcome. So Professor Jim Bowler, my father, of course, has got a lot to answer for in this whole story. But Dad, obviously, as an elder in your own right, we want to, hear what's your view now of the way forward.
For those participating in this discussion, in the 40 years since the inscription to UNESCO of the World Heritage status, based on the two items of natural and cultural heritage, our challenge now is to acknowledge the balance of those two items, and the way in which they intersect one with the other. The cultural story, so passionately expressed here tonight by Jason and Indigenous colleagues, tells the central story of the amazement, the change in Australian history with the emergence to the surface of those two individuals, Mungo Lady and Mungo Man, now nearly 50 years ago. The resolution now of the years of uncertainty is coming now into sharp focus. This is the moment that we have to bite the bullet and make decisions now of the way forward. There were a lot of management decisions made in a progressive way with fairly, sometimes quite robust dialogue. But up until 2013, that management group was really making progress. but it was it was terminated by the New South Wales government 8 years ago. In the subsequent 8 years, there's been no opportunity for people like myself to dialogue with the traditional owners to ensure that the connection between culture and natural heritage was recognised, maintained and developed in a creative way, so that the Australian people will understand not only insight into the traditional owners and the fantastic story they have to tell, but their story connects to country. That story is very largely one connected to country. And it's that connection to country we have to pass on to the Western world, to the rationalist world, to the scientific world like myself. And it's that connection to country that has been, in some ways, neglected. In the last 8 years, there's been no dialogue between myself and the traditional owners. The suggestion now of the three-phase return to the earth is one which strikes a common chord across the boundaries, where we all agree that the return to earth is the appropriate way, the beginning for the future. But when that happens, will require the insights of management, the insights that go with the consultation of the whole significance and what happens next. And in that context, the importance of the landscape. It's the land that tells the story of the people. And when people arrive at that site, it is the land and the stories of the land that really inspire people and reverberate in that spirit of connection to both land and ancient people. It is the land of consciousness, where human consciousness arrived on this great land of Australia at least 50, 60, I would say 120,000 years ago. That connection between the natural story of the land and the wonderful story of the traditional people, that is now the plan we have to address in the future. I should comment that and my colleagues, Professor John Mulvaney, and the former chairman of the management committee that operated so effectively up until 2013, Mike Ockwell, who is not with us this evening. In 2016, 6 years ago, we wrote joint letters to UNESCO pointing out that the Willandra World Heritage Area had reached endangered status. That was 6 years ago. UNESCO were thoroughly informed of that reality. We had replies, went back to our political superiors, and of course we got the spin. It's okay, mate, she'll be right, we'll fix it all. In the last 6 years since then, the situation has gone from bad to worse, and so that we can justifiably now declare to the UNESCO that this World Heritage Area is bordering on and possibly reached endangered status. No nation, no continent in the world wants to have that shame of heritage mismanagement on its tradition. So that's an issue that those of us interested now in making the commitment to the public comment, I'm happy to provide copies of the letters to UNESCO should they be required, but we're now in a position where the three-phase return to country is the beginning of the long journey which we now confront and which we now have an opportunity to bring to fruition.
Beautiful, Dad. Wonderful. We're very fortunate that you're still here with us and able to share with us those remarks, the history, and your unique view on this story. But there you have it. From you heard from Mary Pappen. We've had Jason and his incredible work of laying this all out with his father. Arnie, Vicky, I think you were one of the first people to support this document. Thank you for your leadership. And it's a way forward. And to have Uncle Roy and Arnie Beryl is hugely significant. And we're just starting this, and obviously with Uncle Danny as well. And Danny, our heart goes out to you and what's happened to you over the last month. But hopefully this is something of a hopeful thing. as we can come together and build a consensus, Jason, that's got Aboriginal voices, scientists, other Australians coming together and saying, here's a way forward. Uncle Danny.
Yeah, look, I just want to say something while we got our Americans people there.
Yep.
When the Mungo, you know, was first made, I suppose, world known, you know, for its significance. We sitting on the veranda there at Mum's old place in O'Connor Street, and the car pulls up outside, see, pulls up, and this family of about 4 got out, mum and dad and 2 kids. And they said, this is where Mrs. Kelly lives. Yeah, this is where she lives, there she's there. They said, we're from America. They said they read about her and Mungo in the National Geographic. And they felt it was something that they wanted to do, was come and meet Mum and go out to Mungo for a visit. You know? So that's how much Mungo World Heritage has inspired people around the world. Just want to let you know that.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Uncle Danny. Yeah,
then I think now might be a good opportunity to take questions, but then talk about the actions. So the public comment period, I think, starts, is it the 1st of November?
Yep.
So might be talk to people about the public comment period, how they can be part of that.
Monday.
Maybe we might be able to provide a template for people that are intimidated with writing. And I guess also, and talk about a bit about maybe the change.org petition also. But let's talk about some questions and some actions. I reckon might be a good opportunity now.
That's great, Jason. We are blessed to have a number of very highly important educators with us. Jenny, there was somebody you wanted to throw to and get maybe open up the discussion part. We'll do about another 20-25 minutes together if you can stay with us. Jenny, there was over to you, Jen.
Hi guys, I just wanted to, we're just having a quick discussion in the group chat. People are asking for documents from Jim. If you want to put your emails, because we're not collecting, we haven't got a lot of people's emails. So if you just drop it in there, we can, Ben can keep that scroll and follow up with documents. Lou, are you still here? Louise, it would be really lovely just for you to share with us just a little bit of your experience as a teacher and educator who has been so moved by Mungo, just the difference it makes to you and to your schools, if you'd like to say something. And then after that, if we can throw to Vasso, if we could just have a quick chat from you, Vasso, about the significance of Mungo as a national story.
Thanks, Jenny. So this is Louise. I've been working with teachers and principals and educators for the past 13 years. And every year we take a busload to Mungo, and we're hoping to start like even taking 2 next year, because it's become so, the story is so ingrained in me now. It's like Michael said once, you know, you can take the girl out of Mungo, but you can't take Mungo out of the girl. And that's exactly what's happened to me. And for me, it's really, really difficult in one way, because I lead these trips to Mungo, but I don't want to tell the participants anything about the place, because I want them to experience what the land holds, that story and that spiritualness for themselves, you know, not to have the Louise experience, but to have their own experience. And over the years, and like I do photography as just a side, bit of a hobby, and I've seen the whole landscape move and change, but it's always amazing and beautiful. And I am truly passionate about going. It's on our doorstep. I think that every single person in Australia should absolutely go to Mungo. But my idea is that if we can get principals and leadership and teachers as a part of their cultural competency to come to Mungo on immersion with us, we see changes of heart. a couple of people have come back and they've, had experiences in their life, but when they've come back from Mungo, they've been so deeply, deeply touched. And we can talk all we like, but once you immerse yourself in that spiritual place and allow the landscape to speak to you and the story to speak to you, and listen to the Aboriginal people out there and listen to the elders and listen to the Discovery Rangers, something happens in your heart and you're never the same again.
Yeah. Louise, can I just ask if it's me, your old mate?
Yes, Vicky.
That just doesn't happen just like that. Hang on, I've got to shut the door. I got kids in the background. Bloody door shut it that loud.
That's all right.
Louise, those sort of things just don't happen, don't it? It comes through a structure and a commitment from the CEO.
Yes.
This is what we're going to do, whether it's
true.
a carrier program or whatever.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, that's right. And that's how the visits to Mungo independently is a living thing.
Yes.
Because you're talking, like you've been on all the Yingity immersions had, and it's great that Sandhurst now has picked it up. And that's a real challenge, I think, for schools to be able to do, is to be able to pick it up and run it and do it themselves outside of an outside organisation. So, but it's easy, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It's easy.
Thank you, Louise.
Vicky, can I
jump in there, Jen?
Can I just say something? Thanks, Vicky and Lou, because getting to Mungo is the thing, and for all of us on this call that either have been there or would love to be there or drawn by this incredible, powerful side. But then around Australia and internationally, people are learning about this story, and our international guests are so passionate about showing us, telling the story back to us, how significant this is, the oldest ritual burials in the world. So we have with us, I think if Vasso is still here, Vasso is one of the key educators at VAI, which is the Aboriginal Advisory Board for Education in Victoria. And Vasso, we want to understand just very quickly how significant this is as a national story. For those that can't get to Mungo, we need to be able to put infrastructure there and have this place properly resourced, as Vicky's saying, so it can be a highlight and people will want to learn more.
Well, they've been working hard to bring Mungo, as far as I know, Jen. Mungo's story, they actually have the old case. They use the old case where they took the Mungo man away, and they've got a package and they've got a whole curriculum thing inside that. I don't know if it's VAI that's done it or not. Anyway.
I think Vasso's here, Vicky. I think we're going to hear.
I am here, Ben.
Yep.
Hi, Vasso. Jump in.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Jason, and hello, Vicky. We haven't met, but
Hi, Vasso.
hello. I was going to say hello, Jason. How you going? And thanks, Jenny, for throwing me in. I wasn't expecting to. So I work with VAI in Victoria, Victorian Aboriginal Education Association, and
got your t-shirt. I'm Facebook. The t-shirt.
You like my t-shirt?
I've got the VAI t-shirt. Look.
Oh, great. Louise was talking about going to Mungo, and now I wasn't expecting to speak. So let me just sort of say a little bit. I've reconnected with Jenny after nearly 30 years of knowing Jenny many years ago in my early 20s. So, and it was around the national curriculum that was developed for Mungo. And I'm really glad to hear from, because I've known for a long time of Jenny and Ben's dad, Jim Bowler. Jenny's asked me to talk about the national significance, and there's the obvious what's already been said about the significance of Mungo man and Mungo woman to the scientific community and the world community. I want to also mention the significance of Mungo man and Mungo woman to Noongar and Yamaji and Bayungal people and people in Western Australia who I know who know of Mungo Man and Mungo Woman, and it is part of that whole story of the continuation, the longest surviving culture in the world, and all that narrative that we talk about. Louise talked about the site itself, and I have said myself many years ago, I hitched a ride from Melbourne with bikes in my 20s, and we went to Mungo, and in the late 80s. And I remember at the time on the train trying to get directions how to get to Mungo National Park, and these old fellas didn't know about Mungo National Park. They were on the train, and eventually when we said where we were going, they were saying, "Oh, Mungo Station." So, you know, it had all that history before it became a national park. Tonight I've been shocked to learn. And I didn't know, Jason, and I feel really stupid that I didn't know this, but I didn't know that these bones have not been reburied in all this time. And I think it's shocking. I think it's disgusting that it has been held off since 2013, as Jim said, and you've all spoken, with everything that's been on hold. Repatriations of bones has been going, reburials have been going on for such a long time around Australia. As was said, there are keeping places in other parts of Australia. So I am shocked that Mungo Man and Mungo Woman are still unsettled, and this must be really, really hard, and people must still cry for this, the fact that this, you know, hasn't happened. What I did want to say when I did go to Mungo all those years ago, and I forgot to say is, and this is before I knew anything about all the things that I know now that I've learned from community members or these decades, but it is truly just a personal experience, very truly magical place, spiritual place. Magic isn't the right word. I rode my bike on the sandhills there, and I've said to many people over the years, and this might sound a little bit weird, so sorry if it does to people, but I heard singing out there, and I can remember the sounds that I heard, and it was the first time I'd ever had that experience in this land, in this country, in this continent. I've come to.
But I expected FASO to be talking about what's VI doing in this landscape with Lake Mungo.
I think we're going to stick to, sorry, Vicky, we've got a pretty focused discussion here. We'll continue after Vaso. And then if you want to stay in the room afterwards, you can have an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, no, I'd love to talk with you, Vicky, about what we can do, to be honest. You know, I would love to have this conversation if we can connect through our emails and that. And I would like some suggestions about what you think that we could do, because I certainly know that at VAI we have people who are Barkindji mob, people who are Muddy Muddy, Lachi Lachi, and who feel very strongly for country and what's going on there. So maybe we can talk about this afterwards and what we can do to help with what's going on and the educating about this.
More about curriculum based too.
Beautiful, beautiful.
I just want to say, Vaso, thank you so much. It was just really moving. I'm sorry for throwing you under the bus, but you're so clear and so experienced in this area, and
That's
I think
right.
people got a lot from just hearing and your sharing. So thank you.
I hope so. Thank you for inviting me. I'll turn my video off and keep listening now.
Beautiful, Vaso. Thank you for that deep sharing and presencing, your work. And Mungo's a big story with many different aspects to it. And once you start, it can go off into, the spirituality, into the education, into the narrative, into the science. It's a vortex where everything comes together, which makes it so, so special. I think, in honor of everyone's time here and that there is a new wind blowing here, I think it's important that we acknowledge that we are not without agency in what happens next. And to see, Jason, as Vicky, you rightly called Jason's work heroic. I think Danny and Jason have paid a price for standing up and telling this story. And every step along the way, ever since I met Jason many years ago when we were getting ready for the return to country of Mungo Man, Jason's been, so loyal and devoted to honoring his grandmother's vision and unwavering in that. So I think, as we come together now to say, here's a pathway forward, it's not a solution to everything. As Jim has said, there are other aspects like the natural heritage which is another conversation which needs to continue as well. But in terms of this, let's get the iconic remains back in the ground. Let's do it in a secure way. Let's have it at a known location, maybe on the shoreline. There's been discussions about that. There's an example of a burial mound, which is common to Barkinchi and Muddy Muddy and Nyampa and other traditions. Let's use a culturally appropriate burial mound that's secure. And then let's begin a government-funded conversation, properly resourcing. Again, like Auntie Vicky spoke so powerfully earlier, there hasn't been the money to resource the mobs to have discussion and deliberation to come to the table to try and find consensus. It was certainly not the last 10 years. So there is a way forward here. There's a clear plan. We need your support. There's a simple petition on change.org, which we've just put in the chat. We're going to be pushing that out and emailing that out. Obviously, the signatures that Jason's getting and others are getting from the Aboriginal groups are really what's incredibly powerful, but every voice matters. And whether people are scientists or educators or just interested citizens, we can and we do have agency in what happens next. So this simple proposal can be offering Minister Susan Ley, offering Minister Don Harwin a pathway forward which is reasonable, rational, sensible, and the majority of people will be enfranchised by. That's what we believe it to be. So are there any questions or comments? Again, to Sharon and Mark, it's been so meaningful having you with us, and we look forward to walking together all the way through here. Obviously, you're one of your, cousins, Dane Kennedy, was with us in the Holy Land, and the beautiful spirit that is in your family came through him so powerfully. But does anybody have any comments, questions, concerns, ideas, or issues around what Jason and Danny and others are proposing with a 3-stage plan for us to discuss in the final 10 minutes? Yes, Helen. I think Helen's, jump in, Helen.
Yes, good evening. Good evening. It's my great honor to be here, and I ask for the blessing of the ancestors as I speak to this question. I really, really do. First of all, I'd like us all to be very clear about the public commentary period and what we can do. And I put something in the chat section. Auntie Vicky, you were talking to Louise Levy about what sound to be some very powerful educational materials, but people need to see. They need to see, and if we have things that we can share so as to lend momentum to the petition, the change.org petition, but also if we can go away tonight clear about how we can reach out to one another in order to empower people to write and to organize others to write for the public commentary. Because as Jason was saying, that can be a very intimidating process to put that into writing, and we need to empower people so that it doesn't look like there haven't been enough responses. The public commentary period itself is constructed to alienate people and to constrict and disappear voices. So let us be very clear, because as Jason has said, the next step we have is to make sure that we respond to the government call for public commentary and to let them know that in fact the public is watching. We are watching. And to let people know those commentaries, whether it's a template, they don't have to be long, they don't have to be exhaustive, they don't have to be perfect, they just have to be in. And so the deadline for that, and being very clear about that. Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Well, Helen, I want to ask a question then. What resources and capacity, what resources and capacity do our traditional owners have to be able to do that? You're talking about a very high level. So what resources are we giving to them to be able to do that?
This is why Helen's talking about maybe we produce a template, make it as easy as possible, but to make sure as many people as possible are commenting.
Yeah,
and Auntie Vicky, I was inspired, Auntie Vicky, by your comments to Louise Levy that there are these very powerful videos. And I'm thinking, here is an educator who has been taking tours and changing lives for a dozen years. Yeah. And then there was another person saying that we're so far away and we need to see Mungo. There's someone saying she's been there and she hears the voices singing. So I'm trying to bridge the distance, because there are some of us who haven't yet had the privilege to go to Mungo, and how to share this and not to overlook the obvious is that those who have been there may have pictures, videos that we can circulate broadly, because yes, Auntie Vicky, that is a high level and it's meant to be that way. And it is meant to oppress us. So.
Yeah. Well, it's more oppressive for our local Aboriginal community. But then again, Helen, is that enough? Because these things are going to continue to happen, whether Mungo man and Mungo woman are buried or not buried, and whether there's a site out there. Because the numbers out there and the groups that I've been taking for years ain't going away. They're growing. They're growing.
Thank you, Auntie Vicky. We're gonna move forward. I think based on this, just on this one.
What tactic do we take?
Yeah. What we'll do from a technical perspective, just at this group here, thinking about how to stay in communication, is gather all the email addresses and put everyone, with your permission, if you've given our email address here in the chat, we'll get a big thread going. And if there are other people you want to add to that thread, you can add to that thread. So, rather than figure out whether it's WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger or whatever it might be, at least we know everybody uses email. So
I don't use Facebook and I don't do Messenger, Ben. So
email's okay?
Yeah, it's the only thing I do. I can't.
We're going to mute you now, Vicky, just because of the noise in the background. All right. So in terms of any other conversations, questions, or anything about here for what's being proposed, then now's the time. We have a few minutes left.
If there's no other questions or comments, Ben, I think when we sign off, we'll leave the last word with Alice Kelly. I've got a statement from Nan. I've read it before, but I think it'd be fitting that when we go, that we leave the final word with Alice Kelly about what Mungo is. Okay, let's do that, Jace. Let's give everybody a moment. There's Rob Costa. Rob, great to have you with us.
Thanks, Ben. I think one of the things I would like to add, and Jim touched on it before, is this is understandably extremely important to the three tribes, particularly, because of what the land and the identity and represents. But we don't want to forget, and certainly for me, just how important this is for all Australians, for the whole of Australia. This particular piece of country represents something absolutely integral, to the being, to the essence and the spirit of Australia as a land. And even though, you've got people who have come along, a lot later, in the last couple of 100 years compared to 120,000, we'd all like to think, that we are one country, and that the essence of what the First Nations people bring to it actually should set the tone for the spirit. But the representation of what this can actually mean for the whole nation is very hard to encapsulate in words. So that's one of the second plank, if you'd like to say, is why this is just so critical.
Beautiful, Rob. Yeah.
Ben, can I say something, because it's after what Rob has just said? I think I regard myself as a bit of a storyteller, and I think one of the great untold stories of Australia is Mungo itself. We've actually, through our foundation, we're starting to do a lot of work, as you know, and part of that's to be going out to Mungo. We've out the words we use in Life Again is no change without understanding. And one of the things I've always learnt from Aboriginals wherever I've met them in Australia is until you come to our place to see our history and feel it and touch it and talk to us, you won't understand it. So I think one of the conversations is to get as many people out there as you can, because that is the only way to understand this, to tell the story of it, to feel the story of it, because it is an amazing story if we can write it. When I first went out there, I sort of quasi-discovered it myself through an Australian Geographic, really. I knew about it, but it was one of the Australian Geographic. I just went out there to feel it, to meditate in it. It was the most powerful feeling. So I just want to add my voice to that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Gareth. And I think you're responsible for taking Rob Coster out there at some point as well, maybe. But thank you, Gareth, for your work with Life Again, doing very, very important work. Our friends from the Focolari, wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you. I just really wanted to say thank you so much. I have been so taken by these last two public sessions that I feel very proud to have been a part of. I'm a born Australian, so I have the passion of the First Nations very much in my blood. And I'm just really wanted to say thank you, and that I will support personally in whatever I can do. And thank you. You're doing wonderful, wonderful work. So I just felt I couldn't sit here and just listen. I felt I had to say that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What's your name?
My name is Minnie.
Minnie. Thank you so much, Minnie. And does your colleague want to say something while you're unmuted?
Most probably.
I'm not an Australian born, but I'm really so happy to hear all what I heard tonight, and I really behind and really approve, and whatever we can do, we'll try to do our best to help.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. That's what it takes, all of us doing our bit to come together underneath, obviously the vision that's been driven by the legacy of Alice Kelly and by the other grandmothers and by the living still, Roy Kennedy and Beryl Kennedy are driving this with, Jim Bowler and the elders that are gathered, and we're getting behind them. So it feels like a way forward through this rather challenging story. And yet there's hope, and together and only together we can navigate our way through it. So again, thank you to Uncle Danny, to you, Jason, and just final, anybody else have a comment or something on your heart you'd like to share? Sharon Johnson, you must be very proud of your fella. He's doing amazing work. Great to have you with us. Anything else that, Ross O'Shea, you've been in this story for a very, very long time. Anything you'd like to say, Ross?
Thanks, Ben. Just get off mute. No, to be frank, I'm listening and thinking, truly. And you're right. Well over 30 years. Yeah. But there's clearly need for a lot of thinking about what to do and how to move forward. And and what you're doing, I think is a really interesting part of. It's a key piece in a jigsaw puzzle. Don't have a sense of what the final picture is, but it's a key piece in the jigsaw puzzle.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you for that. And yes, I think Louise Levy said you can't get the Mungo out of the girl, was it, Louise? Well, I know if anybody's tried, it would have been my mother, and she hasn't been successful in getting the Mungo out of the girl. So, Mum, any words from you before we close today?
Oh, Ben, the only thing on my memory was that going out to Mungo many years ago, and Vicky was little and et cetera, but I do remember dear Roy and Beryl and the wonderful guitar singing we had around the campfires at Mungo, and the Mary Pappins and all those wonderful elders. And the spirit was very strong then. Let's hope it can be uplifted by this beautiful event here tonight with so much support and heartfelt sharing. And of course, like everybody, I'm so proud of you, Jason. And thank you for what you have done. To say nothing about Jim and Ben, but it's a collective activity, and Vicky, of course, but amazing. Thank you.
Oh, beautiful, Mum. And just finally, Dad, anything final from you? The petition is in the chats. We'll email it out as well. Do share it. It's, the numbers will matter in the end. Dad, any final close before we go to Jason and Alice Kelly to finish up?
No, Ben, I'll thank everybody for their participation. A journey we share together. It's going to require the wisdom of Solomon and lots of public voices helping define the way that Minister Susan Ley makes her final decision. Probably it won't be until early next year.
Yes, wonderful. Well, we are not without a say in what happens next, and I think that's encouraging. So let's go back to you, Brother Jason, and let's close together.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for all coming and standing in solidarity with Mungo man, Mungo lady, all the elders that are gone before, Nan and all of the other elders, and even today standing in solidarity with my father and Uncle Roy and Auntie Beryl. Once again, the petition's there. Sign that petition as soon as we can. The deadline opens up. Is it the first? Ben, the 1st of November?
Yeah, Monday, the 1st of November.
Monday, the 1st of November is the open day for public comment. Let's act as if the deadline is the 1st or the 2nd of November, and let's get it done, and let's get everyone doing a public comment. I'm going to finish now in the words of Alice Kelly. This is a statement that Nana made and is recorded about Mungo, so we'll leave it with Alice Kelly. Mungo is the dreaming place for Muddy people. Is where our people come to hold ceremonies. Mungo is a place of love, peace and harmony for Muddy people. I will add Nyampa and Barkindji. It is also the meeting place of the tribes where we hold meetings, ceremonies and trade of things. The Muddy, Barkindji and Nyampa have a long association with the Willandra Lakes and Mungo long before the white settlers came through this country. The dreaming lines of the Muddy, Nyampa and Barkindji are still there today, and so are those of many other tribes. Mungo is the most cultured place as it reflects the past of the people and the land. It is a place that requires respect. It is the creation place where all things were brought into being. We realize today that this is the place where people and land become one, where our people walk with the spirits of our ancestors. Today we look at this place and we belong. It is a place where all our concerns and worries disappear. It has that effect on people. It is our most sacred site and demands respect. The future of Willandra Lakes and Mungo National Park relies upon good management and respect of all of those people that have an association with it. The children and students must come to Mungo to learn and enjoy the spiritual and cultural significance of this, our most important place of our people, as this is the place of love, peace and harmony. So thank you, everyone.
Beautiful.
Lovely.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Jason. You see the beautiful picture there of Alice and Jason that Sharon is holding up. Let's just spotlight that for another second there, Sharon. What do you want to say, Sharon, about that?
I don't know. This is just a picture of the late Alice Kelly and Jason merged together. Jason's in the Holy Lands here, and we would say, I think everyone agrees Mungo is a holy place as well as a spiritual place. Both, I thought as Jason was reading that, it would be good. This is to show this.
It's an amazing picture you put together with from the Holy Land in the Middle East to Mungo, and they sort of look kind of similar there. And then you've got obviously Alice and Jason. It's an extraordinary thing. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording now. If folks want to stay and continue chatting, please do.